ja, ons is live. Ek vir julle sê, daar is, dit lyk vir my, daar is internetprobleme. My connectivity is nie te sleg nie, maar is nie wat hy moet wees nie. Maar ek sien daar's baie, op download detector is daar baie netwerke wat probleme rapporteer. Julle moet maar vir my sê, hoe sien julle die goed? Ons is 92 mense. Hulle sal seker nou in die vliegtuig begin inklim. Ja, gaat hy by 100, dan maak die meisies die deure oop, hoor. Sê naand vir julle almal, hoor, ek sien vir Chris, ja, ek het gesien, toe ek die ding op YouTube gesit het, daar was 'n ou gewees wat 'n boodskap gedrop het en hy roep homself die boerieman. Ek was nogal geïnteresseerd. Gefascineerd. Geamuseerd. Maar nou ja. Ek sien my wingman is hier, dankie Prees. Dawie sê hy is hier. Ja nee, kyk, ek wil iets vir julle sê. Dinge lyk maar gespanne daar in die Midde-Ooste. Oh shit, ja jy sien. Dawie sê ek het hom geshadowban. Ja, kyk, ek like my niks maar. Ek weet nie. Hulle like nie van my nie. Ek hoop om vir Richard vanaand hier by ons te hê, Richard Botha. Dan gaan ons bietjie gesels oor, dan sal ons bietjie gesels oor wat daar aangaan in Tshwane en so, want hy is nogal baie op die bol met daai soort goed. Ek wil vir julle hierdie videoetjie speel, om vir julle te wys wat is die waarde van paraatheid. Nogal 'n groot eyster wat sy daar het, hoor. Maar nou ja, ja, ek weet nie, ek het geluister so skrams na daai nuwe burgemeester van Tshwane se toespraak en so, ek het nou nie eintlik gefokus nie. So maar kyk of ek vanaand later tyd kry om meer te hoor, maar sien Richard is hier, maar sy beeld is nog nie hier by ons nie. Dis vir my net, daar sien ek vir Richard, ek sien my beeld, hy skuif nog sy apparate reg, en hy kan ons baie dingetjies vertel van Tshwane en so, hy ken daai insights van daai stories baie goed. Ek wil net vir julle sê vir vanaand, ek wil praat oor die feit dat hier is sekere politici wat besig is om sekere groepe mense te dehumanize. En daai dehumanization is moersig gevaarlik vir die hele gemeenskap. En ongelukkig is die oorgrote meerderheid, die vloerplanke, hulle besef nie wat is besig om met society te gebeur nie. En dit is baie gevaarlik. Ek sien Derek Stewart sê hy het ook baie buffering. En hy het ook baie buffering, maar nou ja, Ek moet vir julle hierdie image wys. Dit sluit aan by wat ek het nou al 2 keer oor dit gepraat. En lees mooi wat daar aan die gang is. Breaking. Hundreds of Jews illegal settlers marched through Ukraine. This was the Khazarian plan all along. 2014. Start a genocide of the Russians in the Donbass. Kill as many Orthodox Christians men as possible. Install a Zionist puppet Pestelensky, pretending to want to make peace with Russia. 2022. Provoke Russia into a prolonged conflict and conscript as many Orthodox Christian men into the army to die for Ukraine. 2.5 years later, the Jays move in to steal their land purchased for pennies on the dollar by BlackRock. History repeating itself. See the Palestine formula and substitute BlackRock with Rothschild. Nou ja, ek het dit al gesê, ek het daaroor gepraat, ek het dit genoem, en daar sien julle nou, ek is nie die enigste ou wat oor dit praat nie. Kaptein vir die aand, so sê, julle kan maar relax, die dinge onder beheer, die area wat Putin vir ons gegee het, is 'n nice area, en sy het alles onder beheer. Al die equipment wat nodig is om te dak en dive, as hulle wil begin missiele skiet. En ons het dieselfde crew van gisterand, hulle is fiks en wakker, en hulle gaan julle baie bidblits gee as julle wil hê, hoor. Nou ja, ek sien Richard is terug in sy stoel.
Hallo.
Ja, Richard, welkom by Boerbeskuit.
Hoe gaan dit?
Nee, dit gaan lekker op hierdie flight van ons. And as you've heard when I introduced you, I see you've also got some connectivity issues.
Yeah.
It seems to me like it's all over the country. And
maybe they haven't fixed those cables yet.
Yeah, but it could be that solar flares, eh? We must not forget about that.
Touche.
But
the more we think we're in control, the more we realize we're not in control. Huh?
Exactly. Now, before we kick off with the chat and hear what the guys are saying in the comments, what is your opinion on what happened in Tshwane today?
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of naivety when it comes to politics. The woman that they've put in charge there now has so little political experience, it just isn't funny. And there you go, mayor of Tshwane, mayor of the capital city. It's a scary prospect when you put a person into a position of power. When I think she's been in politics for 1.5 years, maybe 2 years max. Now, from what I hear, originally the ANC and the EFF were saying they didn't want any mayoral committee positions. And now they're saying no, because they're the majority, they want majority positions in the mayoral committee, which means you're looking at a situation where you're going to have a lame duck mayor who's being bossed around because she has no political experience by people that have one objective in mind. And we know what that objective is. They've been doing it for the last 30 years.
Yep.
So, it's the inevitability of the collapse, isn't it? So, unfortunately, the Action SA has now taken up a position that they promised that they would never take up. I had a conversation with Herman just when the party started. I had a conversation with him, and he emphatically said he would never go into any deal with the ANC. His objective was to lift the ANC out of power. That was his objective. So, you know, unfortunately, politicians have very short memories. And that's why I guess they can't be trusted, because they have very short memories. And he's now made the deal with what he termed the proverbial devil. And I guess he's going to suffer the consequences of that action, because I think a lot of people voted for Action SA on the basis that they were trying to get the ANC out of power, and now it's put them back in power, and the consequences will be there. I mean, we've seen the ANC. We know what they're about. We know that they're there to empty the coffers. We know that they're there to break the system. I mean, that's communism. It's there to break the system so that they can put a new system in place. So all he's doing is helping that happen. That's my 2 cents worth of that.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. The thing that my personal opinion is that Action SA has committed suicide.
Well, you see, but you see, that's the weird thing about politics. I'm going to be very honest. You know, it was a DA person that once said this to me. He said, you know, as a politician, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do because the people forget. And unfortunately, that is the populace of the voter populace. They tend to forget what was done, and they tend to live from election rhetoric to election rhetoric. Until you have a populace that really shows an interest in politics and what is taking place, that's all you're going to end up with. Is you're going to end up with people listening to the rhetoric just before an election, and the rest of what happens is forgotten. And unfortunately, that is a very large portion of the population. And that is why we're sitting in the position that we're sitting, is because we end up with people that are so busy with their lives that they actually don't pay attention to what is happening. And they only wake up when that big media blitz comes every election. So they forgot what happened 2-3 years ago. They've forgotten. And unfortunately, that's a bit of a reality when it comes to these things. But I'm hoping, because I think that South Africans have had enough. And I think that South Africans are beginning to become more critical, and hopefully they're keeping notice of what's going on in the political environment, because I mean, it's time for a major change. I mean, if we look at what's happening within the country, there are no answers in the political parties that are there. They've been there for 30 years, and none of them have done anything. I mean, even the DA is guilty of messing things up.
Yeah, well, look, I've made my opinion about the DA known a long time ago. The DA is just ANC light. And the biggest problem that we have with the DA, that I have with the DA, is their Zionist commitment. And that clicks in with my notorious XXX, and they are totally committed to the agendas of the West, and they don't really care about the people. They don't really care about the people. I saw a thread on X today. It was Kabonena Alfred that started the thing. Can't remember exactly what was the topic of it, but the comments in the thing, some people were saying, yeah, you guys want to go back to Bantustans and so forth. And I was surprised to see how many blacks in that thread was clearly saying that they want decentralization. They want the local communities to be in charge of their own issues. Oh yes, it was about the metros that is so huge. And they said that the things must break up again into the old municipalities that they used to consist of. And so that the municipalities can look after their own citizens with their own revenue that they collect from their citizens. And that's when that one guy said, you want to go back to the Bantustans. And then a lot of people jumped on him. But it was interesting for me to see how many black people was actually rooting for balkanization. Because you cannot, sorry, Richard, but you cannot deny it. This unitary thing is done. It has showed itself to be the Titanic that has already hit the iceberg. Look what Donnie Postumus is saying.
You see, look, what Donnie's saying over here is interesting. But what we have to look at is, why did we all of a sudden have a government of national unity?
Yeah.
What created the government of national unity? Well, we had a situation where once, as we've said previously, where you had the coloureds voting for the Good Party and for Gayton McKenzie. You had the EFF, the Northern, the Pedis and the Tswanas voting for EFF. You had the whites voting for. I mean, there's your balkanization. We recognize that. That's what happened. Yes. We had the Zulus voting. We had the Zulus voting for Zuma. So you had that balkanization taking place immediately. I mean, that is what happened in the election. So how do you solve that problem? How do you solve that problem? If you're a centralist, how do you solve that problem? You can create a government of national unity.
Well, that is, but Richard, but creating that GNU is, you know, it is like patching a tubeless tire, you know, that has been nailed. I mean, the fact of the matter is, die Afrikaanse ouens sê nou, dis 'n regering van nasionale verleentheid. I've got an interesting question for you. You're a guy that likes to think out of the box. Listen to the following. We know that this month is the annual BRICS conference in Kazan.
Yeah.
And there's a hell of a lot of new countries that want to get into BRICS. So it's going to be an important meeting there. Now, South Africa is sitting with a GNU. So the delegation from South Africa that's going to go to Kazan, will that include DA people?
Would have to.
And those are the people that wanted to arrest Putin.
Yep.
So now I said last night in the chat, I said, imagine this. Steenhuisen coming down the stairs of the Erie and Putin waits for him and say, okay, guy, jy het wou my mos gearresteer het, hier's ek. Arrest me.
Wait, wasn't it Steenhuisen that said if the Bellable was signed, that they would leave the GNU?
Yeah.
What happened there?
Kyk, ek hoop hy gaan Kazan toe en ek hoop wat is daai Chechen leader se naam? Ag, my heerlikheid, Kadyrov. You know Kadyrov? And I hope
What's that
Kadyrov
mean?
welcomes. Yeah, I hope Kadyrov welcomes Steenhuisen on the tarmac and say, "Hey, let's go for a ride." And that's the last time we see Steenhuisen.
Well, you know, we're sitting in a situation where you have two complete opposite ideologies that, think about it, have been fighting each other for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, since Lenin got off the train and took over Russia and established communism within the world, since that happened, we've had two basic forces in the world that have been the thesis and antithesis of the movement of this world for the last 100 years.
Kyk wat sê Davie.
Die JC,
he is addressing JC and he says,
yeah,
die bergingslewe van petrol in toerusting se brandstoftanks is 1 maand. In other words,
yeah,
if I understand him correctly, the fuel that you put in your car's tank can actually only be kept in that tank for a month.
I didn't know that.
Well, I'm going to say this. I'm a hermit by choice. For the financial year March 2023 until February 2024, I spent exactly 1,000 Rand on diesel for my car. So that means I've got an 85-liter tank on that car. That means that my diesel lasted me a year in that car. There was no problem.
So that statement's incorrect.
Yeah. Oh. But you know,
Elaine, we're sitting with a situation, you know, remember when I told you about Bantu education and how I read something around Bantu education and how I read that prior to Bantu education being implemented, the only education that the Africans got was from the missionaries, the mission schools.
Yes.
And that was up to a maximum of standard 3. And that it was actually the National Party, because of their whole policy of wanting to implement independent states. They started the Bantu education to upgrade the education of Africans so that they could run their own countries. That was the original idea, okay? And we know that obviously that idea was hijacked and that one of the architects of that idea was killed in order to make sure that that idea doesn't take place. Now, you know, I was listening to a thing the other day and it was talking about how the Brits, their objective as a superpower of the day and as an empire was to take over people's land, to force them into subjugation of the empire.
I think I read that, saw the same thing.
Is it? I mean, I found that absolutely fascinating. There's some of the facts that he didn't have, which I've gotten on the side, but he confirmed a lot of facts that I had as well. And I found it very, very interesting because the big picture that he was talking about is the same big picture that we're dealing with today. Is forced integration is about becoming part of the empire. And what is the empire that we are currently dealing with? if we look at what has been implemented, World Trade Organizations, if we look at all those structures, the empire that we're looking at is an empire of money.
Yes.
There's no longer a tangible king or a tangible lord that you can go against. It is the interests of global economists that are ruling this world. That's why we have free trade. That's why we have all these aspects, because what does free trade do? It allows the economists to operate outside the realms of the country. It allows them to circumvent the operations of a country.
I listened to a guy talking along these things that you are talking now, and he said that what the globalists managed to do to Africa is they invested in infrastructure that made it possible to get the resources out as cheap as possible.
Well, interesting. This guy was talking about why they got rid of Verwoerd. Because it was cheap labor. He was going to get rid of the cheap labor because he was developing the labor so that it could go back to their independent countries to uplift those countries.
Yeah, but
he was going to get rid of that labor. And I mean, who was the first guy that tried to kill him? Remember, who shot him first? Wasn't it Mr. Smith from the Johannesburg Business Forum or whatever?
No, I can remember that shooting incident.
Remember,
the thing is this, and he said then that what they are doing, so they take the natural resources out as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And then they pay the country in paper money that means nothing.
Yeah.
It's worthless. And plus, they give them access to these massive loans. And that indebts the country. And the only way the country can pay back is with resources.
But that's the exact same thing the Chinese are doing. It's the exact same thing the Chinese are doing.
Yeah, but with the Chinese,
the exact same formula.
I've had a few skid marks on that, and I'm talking to guys that live in China and so forth, because people were making a big story about this one harbor here in Africa where the Chinese has taken control of the harbor. What is happening there is those countries, they cannot manage those harbors. They can't manage those harbors. It's the same thing that happened to Singapore. They couldn't manage those harbors. Then the Chinese said, okay, we're going to manage those harbors. The normal rates and stuff is in play for everybody that uses the harbor. The harbor will obviously make money. We're going to take a portion of that money off on the capital involved and we'll pay out to you. And once the capital has been paid off, you, the country, have the choice. We will keep on managing it, or you can take over the management. Because they saw that they saw that, okay, they built a beautiful place with all the infrastructure and what, and these guys couldn't manage it, and the thing were falling apart at a hell of a rate, and they said, whoa, and they took control of that harbor. Now things is running smoothly. Those harbors, that one on the east coast and the one on the west, in Western Africa, somewhere in West Africa, those two harbors apparently have taken away more than 40% of the traffic from the South African harbors.
But you see, that's not what happened in Angola. That's not what happened in Zambia. If you go and look, and I mean, I know people that were literally involved there. I mean, the one used to be a friend of the Republic of South Africa. Remember when we had Frelimo and who was the other guy? General Paulo Gattu. Remember General Paulo Gattu?
Yeah.
In Angola. Anyway, what happened over there was that the Chinese came in and they built 500 kilometers worth of road at the cost to the Angolan government, but those roads went straight to the mining facilities of the Chinese in order for them. So they used the exact same formula as well.
And that's what they do.
Yeah, they used the exact same formula. And the thing is, to build those roads, they brought a whole bunch of Chinese to build those roads because they said that the local, and they left them behind. They remained behind. And later it was found out that the majority of those Chinese were actually from the prisons in China.
Yeah, yeah. Look, they did it here at Phalaborwa when they bought Foscor.
Mm-hmm.
They brought the Chinese into mine because they said they can't work with the locals.
Yeah.
And the way it works is those Chinese prisoners, they get the option. They can come and work here. They can work here or sit in jail there. But there's a condition. Once their term is done, they're not allowed to go back to China.
Yeah. That's
and
what I heard.
Because I know people here in Phalaborwa, and they said those Chinese guys, when their terms were done, the mine re-employs them then at another rate. They get a better pay and all of that because then their prison service is done and so forth. And when I was in Tanzania, no, they bring their own labor. When I was in Tanzania, there was a Chinese guy staying in a hotel room next to mine, and we sat at the breakfast table together, and we started talking. And and he said to me, the thing that they cannot understand is that and he was speaking about Tanzania. He said, this country inherited a lot of infrastructure, railways and everything from their colonial masters. But they didn't maintain anything. And we were sitting on the terrace and he said, look at the buildings here. They don't even maintain the buildings. He said, and for me as a Chinese man, I cannot understand that. These guys had rail services here before we had rail in China. He said, but the things are not operational, the things are not working. And then he told me a story about a railway line that they were building in Tanzania towards one of the mines or something.
Yeah.
And I think it's a 300 or 400 kilometer line that they built. And he said, you know, the Western media, they say that, yeah, we built these lines just to get to the raw materials and so forth. He said the difference is all the communities along that line, they now have got railway stations. So they can get goods to their community. Plus, he said a lot of them are now working in the city because they travel from where they live into the city. They travel in an hour's time. They're in the city, and when they're done in the afternoon, they come back. He said so that communities are all benefiting from that one railway line.
But and, you see, that's the same principle. Yeah, you see, but that's the same principle as what you spoke about. That the Americans come in and they build, you know, just to get the minerals out cheaply and all that sort of stuff. It's the same principle. There are people that will benefit from that input that is coming into the country. But at the end of the day, it doesn't benefit the country as a whole, because what are you doing? The mineral resources are still leaving.
Yeah, but now what happened here in South Africa? Our own government destroyed our local industries that were refining those minerals.
Agreed.
That's
Our
what
own
happened.
government, the government did it. Why?
Yes,
To impoverish.
the
Why?
population.
To impoverish the population in order to bring about nationalization so they can implement their communist plan. You see, it's simple. I mean, I was listening to an interview with Malema the other day, and he was busy interviewing one of the justices for the position of Chief Justice or something like that. I just saw a little part of it. And the question he asked the justice was, does the Constitution allow for expropriation without compensation? Now, I've looked into this. And he says, well, the actual question he asked, he says, can we implement a law that makes the state the custodian of all land, just like the state became the custodian of all minerals and all water? Can we make the government the custodian of all land? Now, Colleen, you've looked at the Constitution, haven't you?
Yeah, but not like you.
Okay. Now, I've read Section 25 of the Constitution. Apparently, that guarantees us the right of land ownership. You know that it doesn't. It doesn't guarantee us anything. Because what it says is that land can be expropriated based on the limitation rights in terms of Section 36 of the Constitution. And Section 36 of the Constitution says that expropriation can take place if it is a law of general application in a democratic society. A law of general application. So what does the term law of general application mean? Pratt, yes, that's it, Pratt. The law of general application says that if I bring about a law that says I'm expropriating all land and I'm making the state the custodian of all land, is that not a law of general application?
You know, Richard, the problem that we have is that our Constitution was written in Washington.
Yep.
And they bargained on greed and low IQ to get it through. And then we had the situation that the bulk of the white people decided it's going to be a good plan not to vote. So the representation evaporated. They bitch about it, but that's what happened. They've got all sorts of stories why they didn't vote and why they won't vote and what. And I said to them, enjoy it on the trailer. You have fun there on the trailer. You must just understand that bus is going to go where the driver is going to take it, and you've got no say. You're on the trailer. You decided. You jumped the trailer by your own choice.
But Colleen, the first vote was decided before the vote even happened.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
I know.
that, and I know that. The results of that first election was predetermined. I mean,
sure.
it's the worst secret that was ever kept in South Africa, because the ANC complained. It was a negotiated result, because the ANC complained that their people were outside the country, so it could never be a true reflection of the people's choice. So it was an organized result. I mean, every politician in the know knows that. Every politician.
I spoke to a guy, and it's a black guy.
Yes.
He was in the intelligence section of the police, the SAP, and he said to me that in what is that suburb in Pretoria, just a Voortrekker Road, and you go to the right. But he said there was a house there with a double garage with ANC votes in boxes, sealed and ready to be counted, packed there by him and his colleagues. And they got instructions when to take out and where to take it. So
but
it was.
Elaine, it's in terms of those boxes and everything, that's the rudimentary side of it. I mean, we've had 2 elections now, okay? 2 national elections, where all of a sudden the counting stopped. Remember I told you about the first one, where the ANC was busy losing Gauteng. Now this last one, remember they stopped as well.
Yeah.
There was a problem with the system.
Why we're on it? Tell me this.
Yeah.
Lesotho is running a minority government in Gauteng.
Correct.
How the hell are they keeping the thing on the rails?
Well, he's got enough small parties over there to make sure that the budget goes through. That's all. You just need the smaller parties to get the budget through. Once your budget is through, off you go. So he's, I mean, he's running into a bit of a problem because of what's happening in Pretoria. And because he doesn't see eye to eye with Cyril, they've run into a bit of a problem there. But I mean, Gauteng has kind of been outside the ANC for a while now. In terms of it hasn't been part of the ruling group for a while now, if you think about it. Even the previous premier didn't see eye to eye with Cyril. So now, that's been for a while.
Now, this fight, this infighting because it's quite clear that Lesotho is anti-Cyril.
Oh, definitely. I mean, no, but Gauteng's been kind of outside Cyril's realm of influence for a while.
And then I heard Fikile say last week that they're going to sort Lesotho out on the neck this past weekend, and apparently they couldn't sort him out.
No.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, you see, as long as they can, get the smaller parties to cooperate with them, they'll maintain. And I mean, the smaller parties, ideologically, they're bankrupt. So what they are in it for the gain. So if you get this position, chairman here and this there, and it's enough to maintain the system. It's you see, the DA is so. I still think that in terms of the DA and the ANC, it's thesis, antithesis, thesis, antithesis. It's. I think thou dost protest too much, as Shakespeare said. That they're hand in glove, working with each other in order to bring about the designed objective. and there's this spark and this opposition and there's all these things, but methinks thou dost protest too much. Because at the end of the day, it all seems to go in the same direction. I saw it when I lived in Canada. You know, you had Jean Chrétien at that stage, who had just left, and you had Brian Mulrooney. And they were at each other's throats, and they against each other, but at the end of the day, no matter who came into power, the system went in the same direction.
All right. Let's go a little bit international.
Yeah.
I want to tell you this. Now, I have spoken, I think me and you talked about it, what Putin and Xi Jinping is actually planning with BRICS. And we saw now what happened in the Sahel, that the Africa Corps / Wagner crew there, they got the American and the French soldiers out of those countries. And then about a month ago, I saw that there was in St. Petersburg, there was a Congress going on there, discussions about a parliamentary system for BRICS. And did you see that? Okay. And we can now see that on the economic side, BRICS is beginning to morph into a position that they are going to basically be an alternative for the World Bank and the IMF. And
now think about what they're doing, Gulain. Think about what they're doing. They're doing exactly what America did.
Yeah. But let me just complete my little thing.
Yeah.
And then look what is happening at the UN. Look what's happening at the UN. There is countries that have opposed that future pact heavily. And Russia said there must be an amendment in that thing that guarantees the country's individual sovereignty, and it got wiped off the table. So the globalists has got their way through the UN, that WHO pandemic bullshit that they couldn't get through.
World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, all those things are part of the globalization process.
They now slipped it through this future pact.
Yep.
And I have said it. Xi Jinping and Putin is lining BRICS up to become an alternative for the UN. Can you just imagine China and Russia walks out of the UN? Just China and Russia walks out. If they walk out of the UN.
But they won't. All they're going to do is create an alternative. They don't need to. Think about it. Yeah. Think about it logically. They don't need to. If you create an alternative, you create the alternative, right? You can disrupt the Security Council of the United Nations because you've got the veto right there. So you can disrupt anything that is happening over there with the veto. You create the alternative body, which you grow up and you put different rules in there so it becomes, well, they're going to protect themselves within that institution as well. Believe me, they'll make sure that the upper echelons always ensure their own protection. Okay, so they'll put their mechanisms in place to protect themselves within BRICS as well. But if you look at what's happening BRICS and you look at the other side, I mean, IMF, International Monetary Fund, you've got the BRICS Bank now. There's your equivalence. They're now building towards.
Don't forget, the BRICS Bank made that press release last year just before the BRICS meeting, and it said, if you have defaulted on a payment to the IMF or to the World Bank, it will not affect your application at the BRICS Bank.
What was the IMF created for? The IMF was created in order to take over countries. That was its main function, to indebt countries so that they have to succumb to the whatever measures that the IMF implements, and that's how they indebt countries. That's why the first thing that Cyril did when he came into power was start borrowing money from the IMF.
Yeah.
It's the first thing he did. I mean, he didn't need to, but that's what he started doing. As soon as COVID ran, he started borrowing money, okay, because that is the mechanism. So now let's look at what they're doing with BRICS. It's the exact same thing. Now, I mean, typical African, he's borrowing from BRICS and from IMF. So, I mean, putting themselves in the position where they're beholding to. We know what happens when you're beholding to. You lose. Right?
Yeah.
It's the bottom line. So all they're doing is setting up the exact same mechanism. It does, it's the thesis, antithesis. It's the two systems. And what do? They force friction between these systems in order to come to synthesis, which is the ultimate centralization of the whole world. That's what we're heading towards.
You know, and then people was asking, yeah, but America wants to join BRICS. And there was a few other, and France wants to, be observer at BRICS and all of that. And then last week, Putin came out with a short statement. And he said, one of the conditions to be a member of BRICS is you may not have sanctions against any country.
You see, protecting themselves once again.
Of course.
I mean, it doesn't change. Colleen, it doesn't change. It's the same stuff. Either side, it's the same stuff.
So are you saying, and now you must forgive me the Boerans, so you're actually saying to me is we're fucked?
No, I'm saying that until you take up your true sovereignty and you follow the principles of creating your wealth within your nation, don't worry about the rest of it. Create your national wealth.
Like Russia is doing.
They're protecting themselves. You've got to be self-sufficient as a nation. You've got to be
like Iran is doing. Like Iran is doing.
You've got to be self-sufficient, okay, in all things. There must be no reliance on anybody, so that you're operating as equals. Because if you need nothing from your neighbor and your neighbor needs nothing from you, you're equals. And then whatever you do with each other is done out of free will.
Yeah. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but that's what we had under the apartheid regime. We were self-sufficient.
Yes. And that's why they needed to destroy it.
Yeah, we were self-sufficient. And,
and why did we create that self-sufficiency? Because the Boer War, we were subjugated by the British.
Yeah.
So what did we do? We said, never again.
Yeah.
The same as the Jews said, never again, because of the Holocaust. We said, never again.
Yeah, and then the floorboards came in and they gave it away. They gave it away, everything. They destroyed our industrial base.
Everything.
I had a discussion the other night. There was a Chinese guy that set up a factory in Ciskei, in which they were making cutlery. And the cutlery is made from South African steel and all of that. And he ran the factory for 2 years and he shut it down. And he moved, apparently, I thought he left the country, but someone told me that he moved the factory to Gauteng. He said he couldn't work with those people, he couldn't work with the locals. They were totally undisciplined and they couldn't be trained.
But Kulain, why? Because what did the ANC do in the 70s? The mantra was liberation before education.
Yes, they destroyed the education system. That's
which
what they
means
did.
they destroyed their population, basically. Then when they came into power, what did they do? They brought in an OBE system, a system that had failed in the whole world. I mean, first world countries couldn't make it work. Canada tried it, and their literacy rate went from 85% down to 50%, a first world country. So this is what they did, okay? So now you're trying to tell me that the purpose was what? I mean, you're now liberated. You've done it. So why are you not now educating your people properly? Why are you not now? I told you about the thing with Carter Ashmal, that little study he did. Remember, I mentioned that he did a study where he took a group of people in Soweto and for 3 months taught them in their mother tongue. And there was a 30% increase in their marks because they finally understood what they were studying. Why did they not continue with that? Why have they not tried to uplift? Because you have to break the system. So that Chinese guy is dealing with somebody that was doomed by his own people. The ANC, the ideology of communism. He was doomed because that's what they needed to implement. That's what they want to implement.
Tell me, Richard.
Yeah.
What do you think does Putin and Xi Jinping say to one another when they look at South Africa?
Well, who taught the ANC? Where did the ANC get their philosophy from?
Yeah, but the thing is this. Russia and China abandoned that process because they saw it didn't work. Seems to me you've got now
everybody knows it doesn't work. Everybody knows it doesn't work, okay? But the thing is, the ANC is stuck in that philosophy. Even with the evidence in front of them, they're stuck in that philosophy. These people were schooled in that philosophy.
All right.
They
now,
went
my
to
mantra,
yeah?
My mantra on BRICS is, for survival, go tribal.
No, well, it's not for survival. It's the natural order of things. If you want to get away from the global influence and you want to get away from this forcing together, I mean, that was started. Remember, I mean, we saw this guy. He said mass immigration started by the British in the beginning of the 1900s to feed their mines here in South Africa. Mass migration happened, the whole concept of mass migration. I was sitting and listening to BBC the other day where they're trying to justify mass migration again to England. Why? To get rid of identity, to get rid of the mechanisms that give you sovereignty. What gives you sovereignty? Identity. You get rid of identity, you're no longer sovereign. If you have no identity, you cannot be sovereign.
But Cyril Ramaphosa is not in charge.
No, of course not. Which politician is in charge?
Okay, we've got connectivity issues, serious.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Waar gaat jy weer? Yeah. You know, and Johan Erasmus says it boldly and bluntly that the CIA is running Cyril's office.
Well, where did that $4 million come from?
Yeah.
Why is he being paid in dollars?
And you know that 500 billion for COVID. There's
that came from the IMF. That came from the IMF, didn't it?
No, from the European Development Bank or something. Those guys from the European Development Bank told Erasmus flat out, that's bullshit. We've never signed any agreements and we never paid any money. And I said to Johan, okay, but where does that money come from? He said they're laundering the Gaddafi money.
That's interesting. But you know what? That Gaddafi money is also this a story and a half.
And you know, the problem is this. Look at what happened here at White River with that training camp for those Libyans and so forth. How quickly that thing disappeared off the radar and gone.
Yeah.
Because apparently the Libyans phoned Cyril and said, okay, and what the fuck is going on here?
You've been paid.
Yeah.
You can't prove it. Sorry, I didn't say that.
Sort it out. And it got sorted out. So, I must tell you, I'm a fairly optimistic type of guy. I'm not a pessimist. And, but the problem that I see is that we are facing a situation where the bulk of the population is unaware of the moves that are being pulled around them that will eventually destroy them. Their destruction is being planned in front of them, and they even assist in the execution of some of those plans. But they do not understand what they're doing. And I spoke to a guy the other night, a black guy, and he said to me that they are so worried about their culture that is being butchered. And they feel absolutely powerless. And I said to him, but what the hell are you talking about? How the fuck do you think the Boere must feel? And he said to me, but I can now understand where you guys are coming from with this. Because our culture. And then I spoke to that Zimbabwean guy. And he gave me a lot of the documentation that floats around in the ZANU environments and so forth. And for the first time, I realized another component of this SASA breeding program. And then last night, I asked a Venda guy and a Zulu guy. The question I asked them is, said, okay, if a Venda girl gets pregnant by a Zulu man, what happens to that child?
It becomes part of the male family.
He said, yes. But he said, now, if they're not married, the child is then, the vendors apparently, and it's interesting. He said that it's not the whole Venda tribe that does it, but families do it. They have these rituals in which they bring that child into the Venda tribe. And I asked them and I said to them, because I asked the question to a Zulu guy and I asked the question to a Venda guy. The Zulu guy said what you say. the child goes to the Zulus. Yeah, to the Zulus. And then I said to them, but is that not creating a similar situation that you have with the colored people in South Africa, creating the same problem, but it's not so obvious because all of you guys are black? And the vendor guy said to me, you're right. It is becoming a problem. I said, so what is actually happening is your culture is being diluted. And he said, yes, that is what's happening. And then the guy from Zimbabwe.
I don't know if I can agree with that. I can look. You see, if you take, for instance, a European, okay, the European nations, you've got the French, you've got the Portuguese, you've got the Italians, you've got the Germans, you've got the Scandinavians, and you know, their cultural differences are not very big. They're big, but they're not very big. We in South Africa know the differences between the cultural differences between like an African culture and a European culture. We're aware of strong differences. So when you have a level of intermarriage over there within the European context, your dilution doesn't really happen because the person assimilates because it's a very similar culture. So you'll have an assimilation, and that's the same that happens within the African thing. If a woman marries into a culture, she's forced to assimilate into that culture. And the man tends to stay within his culture. It is the natural order of things. And that's the way the world is developed, because the men are supposed to be the ones protected. It's only in the last 100 years that has been fading away because of the modernization of society and the fact that women no longer need men to protect them, because they can now go to a policeman and they can go to a state and they can go to for that protection. So the need of protection has diminished. So what you've seen within the development of society is that the woman no longer assimilates into the group that she has joined. So that now you'll have that separation that is like happening with a vendor and everything like that. But I think in that scenario, it's not a big deal because there's a lot of similarity within those groupings. The problem arises when you have ideologically different groups where there's already a clash and you start getting that. That's when you start getting friction. It's your Macbeth, it's your Romeo and Juliet situation. That's when you start getting ultimate friction. And I think that's when you're going to have your problems. But with them, I don't see that as a major issue. You can still have a level of integration over there, but you have to give that identity an opportunity to be an identity. And the crossover is minimal. It's not going to happen a lot. The same as the French don't really mix with the Italians. The same as the Germans don't really mix with the Portuguese. You understand what I'm saying? It's not something that is written down in stone. It just doesn't happen. You'll have the minorities, the peripheries that do it. But in general, you're attracted to that which you're familiar with. You're attracted to that which you're the same with. So it's a natural thing that happens.
Look what RB is saying here. Waarskuwing. Ongerapporteerde kubergebeurtenis wat aan die gang is en in lyn is met die groot sonkraggebeurtenis wat nog verder gaan versprei, rede vir die internetprobleme.
Okay.
Because when I did the speed test checks, download detector was reporting a hell of a lot of problems on a hell of a lot of networks.
Okay.
That
Anyway, Elaine, it is 9:30.
yeah, you've
Can I ask?
been on you've been on with us just over an hour, and I appreciate it that you took the time. And we will have to have an evening when me and you just talk about. We must talk about this canton tribal balkanization thing, because from where I am sitting, this GNU is a temporary patch, and it is hanging on by its nails.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
See, the natural order is kicking in. The natural
sure.
order is kicking in. And
As I said,
all we
what I saw on that X thread this afternoon was I was surprised at how many black people were talking about balkanization, talking about getting smaller. They want out of this central control thing. They can see it's not working. And many of them say,
you should look at what's happening in the States right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you look at the rise of the individual states that are beginning to turn against the against the federal government, that are beginning to say, we've had enough. Especially if you look around the immigration issue and things like that, how the Republican states are beginning to say, well, oh, you want the immigrants? Fine, we'll ship them to you.
Yeah.
And all those things. That's going directly against the federal state. And it's the whole world that's happening. I mean, if you look at the rise of the right in Europe, it is happening country after country after country, and all those right groups are about identity.
They're going tribal.
They're losing their identity.
They're going tribal.
Yes.
They're going tribal.
That's exactly what it is. It's identity. Because our natural instinct,
it's the natural order of things.
That's it. So we mustn't be worried. We must be enthusiastic about the fact that the more that the centralists push, the more the need for identity is going to rise.
I have said it. This thing in Northern Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, that was a beautiful one. You pointed it out to me. That was a beautiful example of the natural order of things.
And you see what FEMA was doing there. And I've said it's going to go down in history as the moment that the eyes opened of the ordinary Americans when they realized the state is their enemy.
Yep.
The state is not their friend. And now, I mean, Richard, I know you want to go and you think about this, and we're going to talk about it. I asked you a few days ago, what are you saying about weather manipulation? And you said you don't know about. And I can tell you, I was 100% skeptical about it until about a month ago. And then I started sawing articles and things. And then last night, I listened to Colonel McGregor, and he was talking to a weather expert. And the guy explained to him, and he said, and apparently they've got the equipment to measure, to visualize the load, whether it's negative or positive loads in the clouds and things like that. And he showed him how, by manipulating the load, the polarity, with the polarity on one side, they can draw the hurricane to that side. And by changing it, they can push it to go. And then here comes the kicker. And he shows the flight maps of DOD planes, active on that hurricanes. And I thought, you see, okay, there's the evidence.
You know what, Colleen, I would have to first investigate that before I can comment. You know me, I don't like just commenting things without the background.
And I'm just saying to you, think about
that. I've heard of cloud dusting. I've heard of those principles before. You know, where they cause clouds to disappear and where they cause clouds to drop rain and all those sort of things. I've heard of those things before, and I think my comment is simply this: when you start messing with nature too much, nature has a way of clapping you
for
very
sure.
hard.
Look what happened in Dubai. Look what happened in Dubai.
So.
And now the guy said, oops, we salted too much. And I mean, they got in 6 hours, they got 2 years worth of rain.
Yep.
And it was a major catastrophe. And they said, oops, it was too much.
Yeah.
But the guy, I mean, that journalist that went in, they took her into that center and they showed the weather control center and where they do it. And he explained to her and said, we watch for a cloud and then we send the planes but you see, it's trial and error.
Yeah. But nature has a way of clapping you back.
For sure. Richard, thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening.
You too. It's been lovely once again. Thanks a lot, and cheers to everybody else as well. And they can also join us next time.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.
Alright. Nou ja, het is net so oor die 300, ons trek by 1 uur en 18. Ek hoop julle die gesprek geniet. Wat vir my interessant is 'n klomp mense hulle het eintlik aanvaar hierdie government kan nie hou nie. Dis wat ek sê. Daar's 'n klomp mense wat basies hulle het besef hierdie government werk nie. Hierdie storie werk nie. En wat ek oor sit en wonder, en julle moet 'n bietjie gaan dink oor dit, is al hierdie berigte wat ons nou sien, wat uitkom oor Lesotho se kriminele aktiwiteite. Ek vra myself die vraag af, waarom laat XXX toe dat daai goed nou in die mainstream verskyn? Waarom? Want daai goed word gewoonlik onder die matte gehou. En ek het in die laaste 3 dae 'n hele klomp artikels gelees waarin ek meen dis rowwe goed wat daai donder by betrokke is, en ek dink hierdie video van hom wat nou rondloop oor daai ek weet nou nie wat noem hulle daai stad wat hy nou probeer bou het en so nie, wat 'n totale fucking failure is nie. Ek kry so 'n funny feeling, iemand is besig om die dek te stack om Lesotho te burn like hell, want julle moet verstaan, Lesotho is gevaarlik vir XXX, hoor. En wel, ons sal maar sien, hoor. Op die einde van die dag is dit 'n kwessie van hierdie regeringssysteem wat ons het, kan nie werk nie. OHM het 'n goeie alternatief gestel, maar die probleem met OHM se ding is, dit kan nie werk tensy daar 'n massale verandering aan die grondwet gedoen word nie. En om dit reg te kry het hulle 66% van die votes in die parlement nodig en elke ou wat vir die OHM plan vote, weet hy is besig om te vote vir die einde van sy eie carrière. They're not going to do it. Dis my opinie. Ja, Arwie sê, party het opgegee en gaan hom net aan om vrede te bewaar. Ja, Hendrik, ek het daai ding van hom op Boermedia geluister en hy het op my kanaal 'n paar keer al gepraat oor kantonne en sulke goed hoor. Maar ek is bekommerd oor jare niergrein, can you imagine that? Ek sal die internet breek hoor. Hallo Trudy. Imagine that. Want Johan Erasmus het my gesê hy gaan sy best try om vir my en Zuma saam op die skerm te kry hoor. Ek sien uit na dit. Ek hoop hy kan dit reg kry. Ek het nie baie hoop nie. Maar laat kom ons wees positief en ons wees optimisties. Imagine dit. Maar daar is nog 'n paar vragies wat ek hom sal graag wil vra hoor. En ek dink daar is natuurlik 'n paar goed wat hy vir my ook sal wil sê. Ja, Karen, I saw that where the town people threw the town council out, changed the locks on the building and everything. That was quite a story. And yeah, that's what we should do here. But the problem again, groot probleem. Ons sit met 'n klomp vloerplanke. Hulle gaan dit nie doen nie. Want hulle gaan wel weet, wie gaan nou daai stoele kry. Hier is nou 'n joke, 'n lekker een om oor te lag hier op die einde van die flight. Watch mooi wat gebeur hierso. En daar loop sake skeef, net daar. Net toe hy opgewonde wil raak, toe loop die ding skeef. Nou ja. Nou ja. Ja, Koos, Richard verstaan mooi hoe werk daai kantonne daar hoor. Al wat ek vir julle boere kan sê vanaand is dat ons moet ernstig daarna kyk om vir mekaar te kyk en mekaar te ondersteun. En ek dra niks by vir enige ramp of fok-op situasie met die vloerplanke nie. Niks. Ek gee niks. Ek support geen organisasie wat hulle help nie. Niks nie. Ek is nou truly in my dop gekruip met dit. Want hulle gee nie 'n fok om vir ons nie. Hulle wil net hê. Ek het niks meer om te gee nie. Gee nie en ek voel nie sleg daaroor nie. En ons het 'n interessante poll op my community page. Ek wil net kyk hoe loop daai poll op hierdie oomblik. Die vraag wat ek gevra het is, do you understand that there is a difference between spirituality and religion? En dan het jy 'n opsie van yes, jy het 'n opsie no, but I want to know more, En dan is daar 'n opsie wat sê, I like the XXX Kool-Aid. Nou, tot my vreugde, daar is sover 517 votes gewees. 96% sê yes. 3% sê no, but I want to know more. En 1% sê I like the XXX Kool-Aid. So as jy nog nie aan die poll deelgeneem het nie, gaan gerus. Ek sal sommer vir julle die link daar gooi, hoor. Gaan stem maar daar vir wat jy wil. Want ek wou graag weet. En die feit dat so 'n hoë persentasie van die stemmers verstaan dat daar 'n verskil is tussen spirituality en religion, is vir my 'n goeie teken. Ag nee, Koos, jy praat nou stront, man. Wie ken die Switserse ambassade? Richard is baie bekend in die omgewing van kantone en van selfbeskikking en van al daai goeders, hoor. En hy het baie goeie kennis van die goed. Ek het al gesprekke met hom oor dit gehad. En ons het toevallig het ek en hy een aand ook 'n gesprek spesifiek in Engels gedoen, want 'n ou van die Zulu Royal House het gevra. En ek kan nou vir jou sê, in gesprekke wat ek met 'n Zulu gehad het oor Natal, toe hy vir my gesê, ja, hulle erken die boergrond. Hy sê, ons kan dit nie ontken nie, ons koning het daai kontrakte met die boere geteken. En toe sê hy ook vir my, by the way, Durban is die boere sin, dit was die Engelse wat hom gesteel het by die boere. En toe sê hy vir my, maar vandag, as ons na vandag se situasie kyk, het ons 'n praktiese probleem en hy noem toe spesifiek Newcastle. Want hy sê Newcastle is in boerland, boergebied. Hy sê, maar daar bly nou so baie Zulus daar. En hy dink dit sal een van die plekke wees waar 'n mens 'n subkanton moet oprig vir die Zulus, wat onder beheer is dan van die Zulu, die hoof Zulu, jy weet, Zululand. So, hulle praat oor die goed. Suid-Afrika kan nie op kantonne gaan soos wat die Switsers is nie. Dit gaan nie werkbaar wees hier nie. Maar dat hulle sal moet tribal lands, sal die hoof, jy weet, Zululand gaan die Zuluse main peanut wees, maar dan gaan Zululand gaan subkantonne hê in, nou so ek sê, Newcastle, en in Johannesburg, en in Pretoria, en in Kaapstad, oralsters, want dit is 'n realiteit, as jy rondom jou kyk in die gemeenskappe, birds of a feather flock together, hoor. Die ouens bly min of meer saam. En Richard het vir myself gesê dat die stede is die spesifieke plekke wat sal moet opbreek in kantonne. En hulle gaan dan nou staan onder 'n myn kanton. Dit gaan nooit 'n myn kanton wees in die stede. Die myn kanton gaan iets wees so Zululand of Wendaland of Botswana of whatever. Die boere het 'n probleem in die sin dat ons het ook groot gemeenskappe in die stede, maar die vraag gaan altyd wees, is die population density van die boere in 'n spesifieke voorstad van so 'n aard dat hulle 'n majority is. Hulle kan miskien baie wees, maar hulle is nie 'n majority nie. So daar is baie dinge wat uitgesort sal moet word. Dan sou Elizabeth McGill sê, ek het juist gisterand met 'n ou gepraat en saamgestem. Daar's 'n groot verskil tussen religion en spirituality. As jy jou spiritual life reg het en uitgesort het, dan kan jy by 'n religion aansluit wat jy gemaklik in voel en so. Maar jou anker is spiritual. En XXX wil niks van daai kak weet nie hoor. Want die oomblik wat jy daai solid spiritual connection het, is jy nie meer manipuleerbaar deur die sisteem nie. En dit wil hulle niks van weet nie hoor. Ja, Koos, Richard was in Switserland gewees hoor. Wat 'n fok is die kans dat die Switserse ou met my kom sit en praat op breekmerke? 0. In elk geval. Ons sal ons ding maar uitsort hoor. Ok, ek sien Prees sê hier die EFT wat nou weggeneem is van Namibië. Wie wil nou wat betaal? Ok, laat ek net kyk of ek dit kry. Ander sê kan ons naamse kak uitsort om ooms te support. Ja, nee, dit is 'n moerse probleem. Dit is 'n moerse probleem. Het jy Andrei, het jy gekyk of jy behoort. Het jy kyk 'n bietjie of jy die kanaal kan join as 'n member? Want dan sort Google dit vir jou uit. Die ander manier is PayPal. Die ander manier is crypto. Ek het crypto links en ek het 'n PayPal link. Maar jy moet kyk 'n bietjie of jy in Namibië die kanaal kan join. Dit sal interessant wees. Want as jy dit kan doen dan is dit 'n kwessie, jy weet, Google vorder die geld by jou en dan betaal hulle dit oor na my. Maar ok, hulle vat natuurlik nou 'n fris kat die bliksems. Ok, daar het Prees nou die Ethereum adres gedrop en ek het 'n Bitcoin adres ook hoor. Want ek sien net hom na bo gedrop. Ja, die Namibiërs sal met ernstig begin kyk. Ek weet nie watter crypto exchanges vir hulle beskikbaar nie. Hier by ons gebruik ek altcoin trader. Maar ja, crew is lanklaas deur die vliegtuig gewees. Andrei sê, hy sê PayPal werk ook nie daar by hulle nie. Die ander hand met Wynand ook gepraat, toe sê hy ook, dis 'n moerse probleem vir hulle nou. Met die SBB ledegelde en so. Want daai Swift kostes is donners duur. Nou ja, ons is net so oor 'n uur en 'n half. Ek sê almal vir julle dankie. Dit was nice. Ek hoop julle het dit geniet. Maar ek het gesien terwyl ek met Richard gepraat het, sy connection was nie, ek weet nie hoe sien julle my nie, jy weet. Dit is julle of hoe lyk die connection na julle toe nie, maar ek het by tye gesien lelike dips gebeur. Ja, Karel. Ja, ek verstaan ook nie daai ding met swap wat so veilig is in Switserland nie. Maar nou ja, jy weet, die wêreld val uit mekaar uit. Die enigste ouens wat dit vir my lyk wat hulle dinge onder beheer het, is die Chinese en die Russe. Maar ek sien van die ander lande is ook besig om hulle goed by mekaar te kry. Ok, André, as jy goedjies uitvind, laat weet ons, jy weet wat jy uitvind. Sal interessant wees. Nou ja, ek sê vir julle almal manne, dankie. Dis 'n lekker flight. Slaap lekker. Ek sien daai, ek het nie gesien dat daai ou wat homself in die begin op die kanaal, het hy 'n message gedrop en toe het hy hom die message gedelete wat homself die boerieman noem nie. So ek het hom nie in die gesprek gesien nie. Nou ja. Night, boerieman out.